En dan zijn we ook hoorbaar.
You are. So, just give me the official list of all the things we're going to be talking about tonight. We have Fenix, mostly Fenix. Fenix today. Somebody specifically asked for a delay line in the Fenix and for the chord oscillator in the Fenix. And somebody specifically asked if we could show some test stuff. We have the Fenix here. But to the side of this, we have a keypad full of our older modules. So after removing the Fenix, we'll shift over and do some more playing around on our older stuff. And maybe also some circular rigging stuff, because there's also circular rigging happening in the back over there. But yeah, so finally the Fenix gets some airtime. We're still completely overwhelmed by the project. It's amazingly complex to get everything working right. We've had some weird technical issues in getting this thing stable, and I think we've got most of them tackled. Specifically, this is prototype number 2. Last year at Superbooth we had prototype number 1, which we've mostly shown to the world. Prototype 2 hasn't been outside very much yet. We are now almost done with prototype 3. At least all the circuit boards are in production in the new case and final and everything else. On the outside there's only tiny cosmetic changes left. So there's a module over here that's solved with the module over here, and there's some tiny color changes, mostly to do with all these nice new colored rings and trying to color match the color of the rings against the color of the front panel. But yeah, there are still some small technical issues with this one, so bear with me while I sound is very choppy. There's my audio sucks. There's effect on the audio. I don't know. There shouldn't be any. I don't have it through anything right now. I just have the microphone straight to the thing. I can try the other microphone for a second. Let's see. This audio should be better. Or this audio. This audio is probably the best for now. Priscilla, can you check if people are responding to this question?
Not, but it takes 10 seconds.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Yes, now it works.
Aha. Okay.
Now.
So then we talk like this for the time being. I'll disable this microphone. By the time we get to Fenix audio, I'll swap back.
So what no microphone? What
Yeah,
this
is the microphone.
That's okay.
Yeah, room audio.
Hello.
So yeah, we've been going in between prototype 2 and prototype 3. Prototype 2 still has some of the old switches here. Not all the potentiometers are the right height. There's lots of tiny details that we're still improving. The wood is final on this one though, and the shape of the case is also changed since prototype 1. So it's actually a nice smoother case that goes edge to edge almost with the front panel. The final case we're getting is has slightly more luxurious paint than this gray stuff. So we're really looking forward to that stuff. But what we've been working on mostly is getting all the technical things off our checklist. Because there's, besides getting all the analog audio sounding nice, there's getting it ready for manufacture and sort of bringing up all the digital bits that are inside here. There's a whole bunch of microcontrollers inside besides all the analog processing. You can compare it to having a complete network of computers inside this thing. And as soon as you boot it up, the network starts talking to each other. And then after everything has stabilized, we can talk between the modules, so you can have the sequencer controlling the speed of the wobbler so that they are synchronous. Or you can have things like if you press a button on a digital module, it will show on the screen what exactly that meant. It's not necessary to actually have this, because we dislike menu diving as much as any modular guy. But sometimes these kind of feedback things are still useful. So it's just we can provide slightly more information than we could show on the panel itself. And if there's future software upgrades, we can also show more of what knobs mean than we can show on the front panel, because the front panel didn't even know about the functionality yet. So that gives us some flexibility. But getting all this network working has also allowed us to finally start working on the calibration sequence for when we actually have one made. Because once you have produced an entire Fenix, we need to check that everything works, because otherwise we cannot send it to a customer. Everything has to work, otherwise it can't go out. And if it doesn't work, we have to repair it. But usually it does work, but it still needs a tiny bit of calibration. And now we have our built-in oscilloscope over here. There's a whole menu structure of stuff there. So later video, I'll probably make something that zooms in on that, so we can also discuss things that are going on there. But this tiny system contains our entire factory calibration routine. And to do that, it also has to communicate to other modules inside to tell them, well, right now, what you're supposed to be getting is 1 volt. So whatever you need to do to adjust to know that this is 1 volt, adjust it. And then we go on to, well, this is 3 volts. And now adjust so you know that this is 3 volt. And then every time we're done with one module, it gets a nice big green light and it tells you to plug in the next thing. So as you can see, there's tons of jacks and we need to check everything. But yeah, let's actually play with a few things that we've been working on. Last year at Superbooth, only about 1/3 was actually working on the device when we got there. This time, everything on the board is actually doing most of the things it should be doing. After all the technical stuff is working, we finally entered the beta testing phase and making sure that all the firmware and all the DSP things are actually doing all the things that we wanted them to do. But yeah, even the simple things we barely played with out in the open. So let's see. I have here the delay unit, because well, somebody was asking for the delay unit, and this was one of the modules that almost was on the highest on the list of what we wanted to upgrade after we got the designs of the Fenix 2 in our hands, because the Fenix 2 has a BBD delay, which is a sort of analog chip, analog digital on the edge, very simple delay chip, and you can do a few nice things with it, but with a slightly more upscaled DSP-based delay system, you can have way longer delays, but you can also have more interesting modulation effects going on there. So we came up with our minimum set of what we really wanted to have in there. You can see the icons over here. I think the icons are now, of course, incorrectly mapped. At least it's the right icons, but the LED lights up with the wrong one if I switch through them. The first one is the double delay, which just makes this into 2 independent delay lines, 1 volt per octave tracked. So you can, you can tune them as you go. They go quite fast, or they can go quite long. The exact range is still under consideration. We probably want to have something like a minute of delay in the worst, in the longest case, or maybe much less. I don't even know yet. A minute is maybe very long, but it should definitely go very, very short as well, so you can make waveguide stuff. We also have a tiny box icon, which is a reverb. It's a slightly adjusted version of my old block modular reverb. It's quite efficient and can sound very dense and big. There is an actual waveguide in here, which has very short delay lines, also 1 volt per octave tracked, and you can make it to do all kinds of physical modeling, flutes and drums, and self-resonating on ticks. And then there's
Yeah, that was with Horda.
nope. Of course, we finally get a Skype call as soon as we're live streaming. As soon as I enable the audio for them, I can't speak anymore because the other microphone doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to switch to the audio very soon now. The last mode on the delay base is chorus and flanger effects, because there's a chorus is sort of very short 6 milliseconds delay that you can modulate over time, and this one has 6 parallel ones of those, lots of feedback, and we can mess with the phase offset. But yeah, let's try this thing. First, however, I need to set up a very simple sound, otherwise we can't do anything. So let's see what I have here. I have one oscillator already hooked up. It's going from the Fenix oscillator, which lives over here and here. Let's see. Is this audible on the stream?
I don't know. Can you hear this? Low booming sound.
Are people hearing it?
Yes.
Okay.
Magnus Chord Johnson is saying yes.
So let's add a VCA to that, otherwise we get endless sound. And envelope. Okay, that's me manually triggering the envelope. More patch cables. Now the sequencer gets to trigger it too. Okay, so now we have a very basic single oscillator, single VCA patch going on with a single envelope controlling the VCA, and the sequencer is just running the steps with a very small melody and some pitches. On the quantized output, there's also a free running output if you really want to have any TV, but I'm now using the quantized output, which makes it slightly easier to make something resembling music, I think. But now let's see if we can introduce the delay line.
Yes, the question is there re-trigger per step?
Yes, there is a doubling per step.
Okay.
So if you press the double and the step, you see these LEDs on the other side, and then there's long or double steps or long double steps if you want to have extra long ones. Yes, of course. Just unplug this. So let's disable all the doubling first and all the longs. So all the steps are now the same. Now I'm adding some doubles. Now remove the doubles and make some long. And a long and double, of course, then. But yeah, let's disable some stuff. And I'll introduce the delay line.
For everybody just tuning in, can you sort of repeat what you've been building?
I have been building a setup to eventually try and demo the delay line. But to do that, I've been building a single oscillator setup that goes through a single VCA with one envelope controlling the VCA, and the whole thing is being triggered and pitched by the sequencer. And I'm about to inject the delay line into the signal chain. So take the output from the delay now. Untangle all the wires there, and add another mixer for this. As you can hear, it can do quite a few echoes. There's just standard long echoes with nice, almost tape delay-like pitch shifting. Let's see if we can modulate this into something fun. So yeah, wackiness.
Matthew is really enjoying the delay.
Ha! Excellent.
And Triton Modular says hi from Belgium.
Hallo Triton. So let's see the next one. I have the reverb here. Let's see if bit. Let's remove the modulation again. Yeah, it definitely can do some of that. So, so this is the dry sound again. We have just make a single blip. And now I'll enable the reverb on this. It also has a long freeze. So now the sequencer is off, and it's just doing frozen reverb. And if I let go of the freeze, there it goes. Or way shorter.
clock.
Yes, yes, the delay is definitely syncable to the clock. Matthew just asked. This is part of the internal network. It's not possible yet because we're still writing all the software and making sure that everything works perfect. But this is definitely there's a menu page in here where you can say, well, this thing has to be directly synced to whatever clock is on the system. There's the option to within the system. There's several clocks. Maybe nice to explain this as well. Over here, there's 3 clock jacks and 1 reset. And there's it's very close to the sequencer because, well, time-related things are often sequenced. You can set any of these 3 clocks to be the internal beats per minute you want to have. You can just press play and pause on the screen, and then it will have its own clock, like 120 beats per minute. And you can have individual multipliers and dividers on what should come out of each of these. So if you want 24 pulses per quarter note on clock 1, you can have that. Or if you want 1 clock per quarter note on the second one, you can have that too. Or if you want to have triplets on the 3rd clock at the same time, you can have that as well. Beyond that, you can also select for each of the clocks what clock source they're actually based on. So if you have some MIDI sequencer running somewhere, you can also select the MIDI time as the basis for clock 3. But have clock 1 and 2 still be something else in the system, either USB MIDI or internal time, or based on this sequencer. And the sequencer here also has a clock input, so you can also just have your internal clocks be based around whatever the sequencer is receiving. And of course, everything that's happening over here with the clock is routed over its internal network, so you can say, well, wobbler and delay, please be in sync with those clocks. So then there's a lot of stuff to configure under the hood there. The design is not entirely finished yet, but of course we'll keep updating as soon as we get stuff working, because this is way too much fun to share. So you'll see it soon enough.
New sounds.
New sounds, more sounds.
New sounds, more sounds.
More sounds, more syncing. So yeah, this is the reverb. I was just I was again confused by my own LEDs. As I said, the order of the LEDs is still wrong with the icons. So right now we're listening to the reverb, but the icon is the waveguide icon. But I also noticed that the second icon was actually the chorus. So let's see if I can let you hear that. So dry. This is the dry sound. Now I'm going to fade in some chorus sounds. This is still single chorus. Now we can make it fatter with the offset knob. This does something similar to what the Solina chorus once did, but it's more mangled up. So there's dynamic phase shift adjust. And then of course we have feedback. So yay, that's quite a bit of modulation coming from the chorus flanger effect. We've tried to make it go slightly further than you may be comfortable with in almost all of the knobs. So we have some space left for the people that really want to do some extreme modulation with this thing. So one of my favorite toys in there. And then we get to the waveguide. And now for the waveguide, I'm going to do something special. I'm going to remove the audio input.
Aww.
And instead of giving it audio input, I'm going to give it a gate. I see that the... Wait, I'm not going to give it a gate. I'm going to give it an envelope as a sound. So I have a yellow cable here. Yellow we have color coded for audio signals. So you have yellow audio cables, gray modulation cables, and we have blue gate cables. I'm trying to get used to sticking to my own conventions here. Usually I had the white cables. I still have to learn this. But now I'm taking a CV out from a gray output and I'm putting it into a yellow input, which is an audio input. So now I'm going to use yellow cables for this. The object here is making sound machines, just called it Carplus Strong. This is pretty close to that. If you have a delay line and you want to simulate a guitar string or something, you can feed a single spike in there and then just have it bounce in the delay line back and forth. And then every time it hits the edge, it will get filtered somehow. But if you feed a tiny envelope shape in there, you're simulating way closer to what happens when you actually pull a string and release it, because the string starts as a triangle wave and then it collapses and it sort of starts forming these spiky sawtooth type pulses over which then filter out into more triangle and sine shapes. So I'm going to simulate that by using ADSR2 and giving it a tiny plug and feeding that tiny plug into the waveguide delay. So here we go. I have this thing going on. Let's see, it's still triggering. It's very, very short. And probably, yeah, there is plucking going on there. So there's plucking, but don't really hear anything yet. There we go.
Very low full sound.
So I'm now only feeding a tiny block into this delay line, and I can change the shape of the block. If it's sharper, it loses more of the bass. If it's a bit longer, a longer attack gives it more bass without actually having a click. And if I make it too long, you only have too low sound and you don't hear anything. Is this still audible though? Maybe I can now use the other sound again. How about this?
Matt said he liked the low bass sound, so we can definitely hear.
There's bass. Excellent.
There's bass happening.
Are we in a happy zone right now? This may be okay. So to play further with this, I am going to sequence the tuning of this delay line. And
choppy, but if you sync the choppiness with the synth, that could be cool.
If the stream is just not keeping up, then there's nothing I can do about that. Please not now. Crap.
No, for making sound scenes, the choppiness is fixed.
Ah.
Everything's still over the Zoom microphone, right?
Right now, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure why the other audio board doesn't like it.
Well, find that out next time. Sounds good. All fixed. Yep. We continue.
What we're listening to right now is just a single delay line being plucked by an envelope and being sequenced by the sequencer. And of course, we still have a whole Fenix to play with. We've only touched 1, 2, 3 modules, and there's like 35 on here, so we can do way more things. Let's try another thing.
A bit more. Well, you need time to patch. I will make some announcements.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm only patching one more cable, though.
Well, that's not much.
Make some announcements.
Okay. So we're also getting on the Superbooth Home Edition. We have an appointment for being recorded. I'm not sure when it's going to be aired, but we'll keep you informed on that as well. We did a recording for Podular Modcast the other day, which was a lot of fun. We had a great conversation. He's such a nice guy. It ended up being not so much about synthesizers, though, more about us and why we do anything.
Morality, philosophy, why do anything,
yes.
Why us,
Why us,
less about sound, more about being live. I think we may have to go back and do another talk with him about synthesizers.
I don't know.
Maybe we'll fail again, yeah.
If he wants that, I'd love talking to him, so.
Yeah, that was nice.
And we're also on Heinbach's Whiskey Trail. Will be on the Thursday the 23rd, so like this, Thursday at 8, but then we'll be streaming through, his platform. And we're also talking to Diffkit. We're also hoping to still do something with him, and we'll keep you updated on that. And this week and next week, we'll be making more videos of the Fenix. We'll be building an audio library, and then next week we hope to release more of that.
So
yeah.
Yay! Thank you, Priscilla.
Okay.
Then let's plug this thing back in. Let's see if this still works. I've now also added the phaser to the mix. The phaser is not too happy right now. I think the phaser is a bit upset with the amount of DC offset I'm feeding it, so I'm also adding a high pass. Let's see if that does stuff. No. width. No, this will definitely need more calibration. This is why the Fenix is not out yet. We're still fine-tuning all these things. You can see the overload LED going, but there's not actually that much signal right now, so... Okay, let's see if I can isolate the, and show you the phaser separate. Because this I think wraps it up for the delay line for now, because we can keep playing with this thing for hours. But there's more of the Fenix to show. Like even the most basic of oscillators that we barely shown off yet. Let's see if I can get the phaser to work on a standard oscillator. I have here the oscillator, and it's still connected to a VCA, and the VCA is going to a mixer, and then the mixer should be going to the output. There. Of course there's no sound now because the VCA needs something to open it up. There. Now let's see if the phaser can do something. Still. Ah, there we are. So yeah, phaser does stuff. This is one of those things that while revisiting the Fenix 2 schematics, we found out there's a bug in the Fenix 2 where the schematic is a 12-stage phaser, but by accident the Fenix as it was wired would only give you 8 or 9 stages. So we sat down with Bert and fixed that bit up. So now it can do quite deep phasing. It is, however, very calibration sensitive. So right now this is not properly calibrated, so it has a tendency to overdrive way too fast. So we have to, well, probably next week with the stream again. So
Next week will be with Heimbach.
Next week is Heimbach.
Yeah.
So every week we intend now to finally show our progress live as we're actually progressing. Now we have the streaming set up. We can just keep people updated with how far we are. I'll make so close. Yeah, we'll retune this one, and we can show you again next week. What else do we have in there? What time is it actually? Yeah. We're 40 minutes in.
Yeah. What else could you show off real quick?
Real quick.
From the Fenix, or does anybody want
anything specific?
Anything from the Fenix they would like to hear? So, to the Fenix oscillator.
The Fenix oscillator is the one that we were hearing right now.
Yeah.
Let's take the phaser out again. It's a very plain oscillator in its own.
You're very happy with the phaser and the noise box. You were very happy with.
Noise box takes some more time to set up though.
Okay.
We can finally let people hear the digital oscillator because that's.
All right.
And somebody was asking about the Chord oscillator. I haven't touched the Chord oscillator yet. Maybe that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
The digital oscillator is a long story on its own, and I think Laudi should also be here to explain part of it. Because Laudi came up with a bunch of interesting stuff that ended up in the digital oscillator. here is the Chord oscillator.
It's a question here if there is any FM modulation.
FM on what? Because we have a special digital oscillator mode that's FM, so I can do really good FM modes, very stable in ways that analog stuff would. You can sort of do it a bit with the through zero, but if you want DX7 style FM synthesizer, you really need more than just one or two oscillators. So there's a 4 operator mode built into the FM part of the digital oscillator over here. But yeah, I'll have to revisit that, because one of the things that we can now do is show you waveforms on the oscilloscope. I would need a more macro lens to actually show you the oscilloscope built in, and when we have that set up, I can show you the exact effects of what all the FM does and how the waveforms change. But yeah, it has FM on the oscillator. It also has, of course, frequency modulation inputs on a whole bunch of other stuff, and just general modulation inputs. But specifically FM, as in DX7 FM, we have that built into here in the digital oscillator section. But now for the Chord oscillator.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost made for 90s house steps. Let me add some filter to that as well, because no, not that one.
Not that one?
But well,
Oh, there we go. More like, I'm excited, you know you wanna be mine.
there we go. Let's choose a multiple in place there and get some more envelopes going here.
The Chord oscillator is getting some love.
Ha! Lovings!
Marcel is also here.
Oh, hello Marcel!
So 90s.
Yes! Let's get some.
Yeah.
So now I'm playing the same chord, but it's being pitched by the sequencer. And I can change a different chord.
Damn, that's nice.
Then there's, besides going full 90s, let's open the filter up again. 80s? Well, no,
Go 80s.
it can do more
Dan
non-traditional
moet je een
things.
beetje hogere tonen en meer de galmomgeving.
I'm trying to avoid all the reverb sounds so people can hear the thing without the studio
right.
treatment.
Yeah.
I mean, we can turn one knob and then we have massive echo spaces that you can barely hear what we're doing. You can also do like more classic saw stacks where you only have the Chord oscillator is based on 3 analog oscillators, and those 3 are analog pitched, but the pitch offset for oscillator 2 and 3 is controlled by a microcontroller inside. And with the chord knob, you can sort of interpolate between the various offsets that you can create. And the different modes do different things to it, so.
Yeah.
But there's one I really like. This is sort of the chip tuning mode. which pitches oscillator 2 and 3 in sort of stepping octaves.
Yeah. Slow down a little bit.
And
Awesome.
so it's a whole bunch of different experiments of what you can do with a tiny bit of microcontroller control and 3 oscillators. The exact range of and the types are not totally hammered down yet, but this is roughly the direction I want to take it in. Suggestions very welcome. The hardware is already pretty fixed, but you can probably incorporate a few tweaks here and there. Yeah, software tweaks. And things like the exact set of chords that we want to interpolate between, we didn't really hammer down yet.
If you're asked if there's an arpeggiator in the chord oscillator.
Not in the chord oscillator, but I'm glad you asked, because there's a massive arpeggiator in the scope itself. So we have 4 CV gate outputs here, so you can make a whole bunch of other arpeggios with the rest of the system. Maybe, not really sure yet, we could also patch that internally to make the oscillator 2 and 3 be their own arpeggiator, but I think that's going to be slightly too convoluted to set up. So I'd rather do the arpeggiating externally, so you have a wire going there instead of some magical software connection doing something somewhere for you.
Well, Matthew's very glad that the chord oscillator was included.
Excellent, yeah. It's 3 oscillators for the price of 1, roughly. So it's just in terms of service area mostly, because that's I really like really big sounds. But the first thing that I bumped my head into with the Fenix 2 was that for any classic big oscillator sound, you've already used up all your oscillators, and I really wanted to have it sort of be one block and then still have space enough to do other things on the system. So yeah, for the big fat sounds, or just the chords where the individual waveform types don't really matter, you can really make use of that one.
Now, for the Fenix, we talk about sonic variability. So can you give me a very different sound?
A very, very different sound.
Yeah, just whatever, just something else.
What can we do? What is completely different? Well, let's
Matthew is saying he tried to build a Duplo 4 voice and it sounded great, but it's nice to not have to patch everything multiple times.
Agree. A true polyphonic modular synthesizer is really nice to have, and as we explained in, did we explain it in the previous video, or was it?
I have no idea about
I started developing modular things on the computer, so I made a software modular synthesizer, and I started out with everything being polyphonic, so going into hardware, everything being monophonic was a bit of a letdown. So
I think that was in the Podular Modcast conversation.
We talked about that there.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's make a digital sound.
Chords in just tuning could also be very interesting, or just intonation.
Yeah, I did try a bunch of that stuff, but the analog oscillators have. They don't have much drift, but it's slightly too unstable to really do just chords. So we've been discussing adding some just chords maybe to the digital system if we have enough CPU cycles left, because then we can actually do the phase locked, real just chording action.
But sound, you were doing the sound.
Yeah, but I was also explaining why there was no just in the chord oscillator. At least. We can try it still, but it's not flawlessly working as you might expect if you really aim for that moment where the chord doesn't really sound like a chord at all. It just sounds like a new static waveform, and that's very difficult to achieve with analog oscillators. So we may put that into the digital one, but no solid plans yet. But yeah, I was about to make a digital sound. Haven't tried this for a while, so let's first take a raw digital sound with no filtering. Output 1 digital oscillator. Still have there. Yes. It works, yeah. In its base form, this is a sawtooth. This is still a sawtooth. This is an oscillator type made by Lowry that is based on all kinds of phase distortion. So it takes individual bits of the spectrum and mangles them around. So if you change the first knob and you don't do anything else, you don't hear much. You hear a tiny bit of pitch shifting because I'm rotating a lot of phases, but the sound itself doesn't change a whole bunch. If you look at the waveform, you see the waveform change from a very pure sawtooth to something completely mangled because all the phases are all over the place. But then the other two parameters over here, they then sort of start changing those phase shifts more independently, and then weird things happen. So that's what you were hearing right now. And there's also different modes, of course. Let's keep the sequencer running. What?
No, just.
Give it a pitch.
I can't.
Oh, random doorbell. No, not expecting anyone. Ooh, weird bit of wobble over there. Let's take some extra. Wat? Wie hebben we daar? Somebody just entered.
Surprise!
Surprise!
Hey man!
Surprise!
Dude!
Kom
ben je?
even naar de camera.
Wait, we have a visitor.
Laat de camera!
The camera is over there, but you could.
Alright.
Anderhalve meter, gast.
Hoe is het?
We just have a visitor arrive here. This is Paul Das from Other Instruments.
Hello.
Yeah.
En de face mask.
En een face mask.
Yes. Very, very important.
Zo, je zit hier lekker uit te spacen. You're
Ja.
spacing here, right?
Yeah, we're trying to broadcast some sounds onto the internet.
Alright.
Finally een beetje Fenix laten
Ja.
Alright. Stijntje. Hey, toch maar die Stormtrooper.
Ha, yes.
En deze nieuwe, hè?
Yep.
Wat is het? Een circling thing?
Circular thing.
Is er een corona module?
Corona model.
Ja. Op basis van een kick-off van Bavaco.
Okay.
So, how far along are we? Are we almost at the end of the stream?
We're almost at the end of the stream. Yeah. We're over. We're
Okay.
exactly at the end.
Say hi to all the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi.
So
This is
now-
the camera there.
You have to be over here because there you can see where you are on the camera.
Oh,
yeah. Ha!
This is my inspiration for the eraser head model. Eraser head.
Up here.
When I still had hair, yeah.
We're using hey, Emma,
Nice.
hey, Paul.
Nice.
Olivier making sound machines. Toys from the deep.
Toys from the Deep is saying hi.
They're saying hi to you.
Ha!
Thank you, thank you.
How many people are in the stream right now?
19.
19. Great. So.
Ja. Dat is wel cool. Ah, jij zit al in de wijnhout.
Ja, ja. Een wijntje erbij. Sweetie.
Ja, is goed hè?
Ja.
Vanmiddag gemaakt.
Echt?
Yay!
Ja, ja. Op een licht en zo.
Oh, this is right, I get it.
So.
Kom maar hier met dat wijntje.
Oh.
Nee, mooi wijn.
No, we're keeping the wine, people.
Ja.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going. So what's happening? Do we still have things on the list before we?
You picked them out on Tuesday.
Sorry dat ik...
Yeah.
Your girlfriend was, zou ook online zijn.
Yes, I don't think she's there.
She's there. No.
Wait.
Oh jee.
No, we can give her a private demo of the thing afterwards because
Oh, yeah.
we have some shoot that stuff online anyway.
I think that is some job to do a video for somebody.
She's busy. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Oh, nice. These are the sounds, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Yay! More blippings.
Yeah, but the one that you feel on the back of your head, you know, like.
Yeah, the ASMR style.
Yes, this one's the bubble butt.
Loving this bully. What did you do? Bubble the VCA?
I
No,
wobbled the digital oscillator.
Yeah.
Just tiny bit of LFO in there.
Bubbles. Bubbles.
But this looks really interesting too.
Yeah, we'll fire it up after we're done here.
All right.
Double drum. Nog iets leuks? Or shall we call it a night?
I think we should call it a night.
Call it a night?
Unless people have really specific things that we can answer right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll keep you posted on all the new things we're doing. The software is now finally really growing. So next week we'll be back and show you what we've done to it.
Next week, same time, we'll be at part of Heimbach's whiskey tour. And you'll also be hearing from us in the whole Superbooth Home edition. Popular modcast, but that will take some time. But as soon as we know when that's going to be up, we'll of course let you know. All right. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you everybody. To be continued.
Thanks for hanging out, and see you probably next week.
Yeah, all the best for everybody. Be healthy.
Yeah. Stay under half a meter.
Anderhalve meter.
Yeah.